So that's the format for the case study report, so that as we are going through it, you'll be able to grasp how you are examined and how you are assessed, the marks allocated to your report. Before I go back to the format, which we will apply graphically as we are solving this past question, you will need to have that open so that you can easily follow through the report as we go through it on the past question, November 2019 exams, which was the first pre-scene document. Pre-scene, May 2019 was the last before the pre-scene was introduced. Okay, so I always like to start with the examiner's report before the debrief session, so we could understand what happened and where candidates got it wrong, and how you could also align and not get it wrong in November diet. So the examiner's report is a good tool to know where not to navigate and how to stay on course in writing and practicing for the case study paper. Okay, so I'll read the examiner's report, and he said the case scenario is on an agricultural business. The case is in two parts: the pre-scene, which was presented or previously sent to the candidates 2 weeks to the exam, which is the usual practice till date, and also the unseen, which you'll be presented with on the day of the exams. Candidates were expected to write a report based on two requirements of the case as follows: review of the company's management accounts for the 3 years ended 30th September 2019, as presented in the case scenario. Also, the review is expected to include the key changes in revenue, costs, and overheads across the company's revenue streams. Candidates were also required to evaluate the impact of these changes on the company's operating profit and to further comment on reasons for bank overdraft at the end of the year, or at the end of each year, despite the huge profit made by the company each year. Requirement 2, candidates were requested to assess the supply or the contract supply service from a retail store called The Shop. Candidates were also required to critically evaluate the company's proposed strategic business opportunity, the installation of meat processing plant, and discussed any broader commercial and ethical considerations, as well as the risks that may be associated with accepting and venturing into these business proposals. Candidates demonstrated lack of understanding of the requirements of the case. Now, these are the pitfalls, so take note. Mostly, especially requirement 2, which generally is always a challenge because of the time. So candidates seem to have the notion that they must carry out SWOT or PESTLE analysis in each case study paper, not minding the requirements of the case. Therefore, candidates' performance was poor, as only few candidates score 50% or above. Of course, as usual in the ICAN exams, this is a usual occurrence. Now, these are the major pitfalls. Number 1, not dealing appropriately with requirement 2 of the case requirements. Almost all candidates carried out SWOT analysis, despite the fact that there was nothing in the case requirements that demanded for it. Exactly. Number 2, lack of understanding on how to write an executive summary. And number 3, inability to arrange their reports appropriately based on the structure. This is always a challenge. Most candidates demonstrated lack of awareness of where to place the executive summary in their reports. Many of the candidates who wrote the executive summary as part of the body of their report. So candidates are advised to ensure they, number 1, concentrate on the requirements of each case study paper, as any work done outside the requirements will not earn the candidates any mark, any point. And number 2, go through the case study text prepared by the institute, and also especially the chapter on writing a professional report. That is chapter 8, very key. We'll be coming to that when preparing for the future exams. This will help candidates to know how to write an executive summary and how to arrange their reports. Fantastic. Okay, so that's the examiner's report, and I hope it resonates with you. I love reading his reports because it shows graphically what were the significant issues candidates had in that diet and how to correct it in your diet. All right, fantastic. So we have the exhibits before us. And like I said, we are going through the past questions. Always follow my good brother and friend's approach. ZM, if he has a question, he doesn't let the thought escape. He'll just interject immediately. So please use his method, and that will resonate practically and help you capture some thoughts on gray areas and issues you would love to clarify. So please feel free to interject. It's not an autocratic lecture, it's democratic, and you are free to engage, please. All right, so we have a case before us here, and from the exhibits, the precinct presented us with 6 exhibits. So you're actually wearing the heart of someone in the case, and the case is on Detoy Farms and Farm Product Limited. So on the day of the exam of case study, you are no more longer Gabriel Josiah. You are now Chukura Ali for November 2019. So you wear the heart of Chukura Ali on the day of the exam. That's you. So whatever correspondence, whatever signature, whatever it is you are doing on the report, you are Chukura Ali. And after case study, you remove that heart and you become Gabriel Josiah. So the first exhibit spoke to who you are and your employer. Very important. Your employer is Oluwole Ibrahim Izifik and Co. Chartered accountants in practice, and it's an accounting firm. Second exhibit spoke to agribusiness, the constraints and opportunities in Nigeria. The third exhibit spoke to the company's history, which is Detoy Farms and Farms Products, the operations, the board, and the management. And the fourth exhibit spoke to business opportunities for Detoy Farms and Farms Product Limited. And the fifth is the computational. So from 1 to 4 is non-financial information. But exhibit 5 is management account, which is pure numerical information, financial information. And the management accounts was presented in the precinct for 2017 and 2018 only. Then the 6th exhibit are press articles. Press articles. All right. So the exhibit spoke to who you are, what you do, and we will not have time to read all that, because if we read all that, we will not be able to go through the solution. So if we have these past questions, which I'll still share after the class, please go through who you are, what are your responsibilities, and exhibit 2 spoke to the agri-business, the constraints, why the business is lucrative, Nigeria's population and that of Africa, government support and the arable land we have, and also the growth potential and the financial opportunities and the agricultural business opportunities in Nigeria, specifically rice farming, poultry, tomato farming, cassava, and the challenges facing the business and agriculture in Nigeria, post-harvest loss, attitude, climate change, the future of agricultural business in Nigeria. Then exhibit 3 spoke to the history of Detoy Farms, its operation, the board composition and management. So we have the board composition, we have the chairman and the board of directors, the executive and non-executive. And we also have the management team speaking to executive directors and the other senior managers. Exhibit 4 spoke to business opportunities, and specifically the retail contract, which we've been asked in, we've spoken to in requirement 2 from the examiner's report, the retail contract with the shop. So these are details on it. And also the installation of the integrated meat processing plant, which we're supposed to deal with, also in requirement 2. Then we have exhibit 5, now coming to numerical information. We have the management accounts in form of the IFRS format, starting with revenue, gross profit, operating profit, PBT, PAT, Then we have the SFP with our non-current assets, our total assets, our shareholders' equity, non-current liabilities, and we have current liabilities and our total equity and liabilities, both figures balancing total asset equals total equity and liabilities. So we have notes to the accounts, speaking to the management accounts and details of the revenue streams, the cost centers, selling and distribution details. Note 4 on the non-current asset and the asset register, movements of cost, depreciation, and the carrying amount of the assets. We also have that of inventories. We have trade receivables. Note 7, we have trade and other payables. Then we have the revenue stream summary of 2018 provided. We also have the revenue stream summary of 2017 provided. And we have Exhibit 6 speaking to the then Vice President Oshibanjo's article on agriculture. Okay, so that speaks to the pre-scene, which was provided 2 weeks before this exam. And on the day of the exam, the unseen was provided. Okay, so we have, for the unseen, we have 6 exhibits also. And the first exhibit speaking to the case requirement. So we are required to present an executive summary without which, if not provided, you cannot pass the case study exams. It's 20 marks. It's 20% of your exams. You have to write an executive summary. Very, very important. And also detailed appendices, appropriate appendices for you to respond to the 2 detailed requirements in Exhibit 7. All right, so these are the marking structure, the time advised. Okay, so you can see 20% is awarded to executive summary and 10% awarded to ethical issues in your answer. All right, so Exhibit 7 speaks to the requirements and it reads, Requirement 1 states a review of Detoy Farms and Farm Product Management accounts for the year ended 30th September 2019 as presented in Exhibit 9. Your review should comprise of analysis of key changes in revenue, cost, overheads across its revenue streams in comparison with the 2 years. You should evaluate the impact of these changes in Detoy Farms and Farms Product operating profit. In addition, please comment on the reasons for DFP's bank overdraft at the end of each year, despite the huge profit in each year. And number 2, an assessment of the contract supply service as contained in Exhibit 10 and 11. You are also required to critically evaluate the proposed strategic business opportunity, the installation of meat processing plant by DFPP as contained in Exhibit 12, and discuss broader commercial and ethical considerations as well as the risks that may be associated with accepting / venturing into these business proposals. So your client said, or your boss, you report to James Oluwole. No, you don't report to James Chukwu. Okay, yes. You report to James Oluwole because, yes, that's the audit firm, exactly. Chukura Ali is you, and the subject is this client. So you are supposed to report to your boss, but then the destination of the report goes to Detoy Farms. So it's an external report, of course. So any report that is from an external source or client to your firm, irrespective of who you report to, is an external report. But if it's a ZFA Ali's financial statements you're analyzing and you are reporting to somebody within your organization, then it's an internal report. Very simple to analyze. Okay, so those are the 2 requirements and what we are required to do in detail. And we have Exhibit 8 speaking to Mr. Olaolu, who is someone from Detoy Farms, and James Oluwole was the recipient of this mail, which is Exhibit 8. And that spoke to, I'm sure, the request for the proposal on the shop, and that will comprise of requirement 2's engagement. Then Exhibit 9 is financial information for 2019. So we have 2018 and 2017 presented to us in the pre-seen, and 2019 is presented in the unseen. So we have details of everything here, including the management accounts, the SFP, and the detailed revenue streams. Then we have Exhibit 10, details on the shop, speaking to what they do in the shop, poultry products, fresh veggies, meat, and everything that has to do with Detoy farms and the requirements for the shop. So please go through it as we are picking them one by one. Then we have Exhibit 11, a reaction to the shop's contract terms. We have additional 25% markup on the normal markup. Then we have repackaged, returned vegetables and meats from the shop and selling them to regular customers as fresh. So this is an ethical issue. So you need to take note of that as you read in between the lines. Repackaging all returned vegetables and meats and also reselling them to regular, no, it's an ethical issue. So take note of them. There are many, so you need to decipher and pick them out as you read through the case. Then we have Exhibit 12, speaking to the project for requirement 2. We have the initial cost, we have working capital cost, number 2. Then we have the estimated revenue and the probability. Then we have the cost of capital. Then we have the scrap value. So these are details of our computations and what we are supposed to do very graphically. All right, so having just gone through a bird's view of the whole exhibits from 1 to 11, you must understand that you need to go through them, and that is why you have 1 hour reading time suggested. So I suggest you read very fast. So you've gone through the unseen. You may not need to use 1 hour. So maybe 30 minutes, 40, 45 minutes maximum. Please read through speedily. And you can only achieve that through practice. Start practicing how to read through. If you don't like to read, you may not like case study exams. There are a lot of details that must be read if you must understand the case. So please take note of the reading and engage in the reading very practically. So you need to read very speedily to be able to grasp what the case is all about. Okay, so in starting the case study exams, you need to map out your pages, and that's planning. That speaks to planning. So you need to map out your pages. So your first page should be left untouched. So you know from practice and from planning that your first page is your cover page. Then number 2 is your executive summary. Second page and third page is your executive summary. So in the hall, you don't write from the start your executive summary. You leave 2 and 3. 4 and 5 are your introduction and your background pages. So you leave that. Leave them marked. Then 6 to 12, depending on how much you write, is requirement 1. Then 13 to maybe 20 or 19 is requirement 2. Then maybe from 21, 22, 23, depending on how bold you write. And also a disclaimer in case November 2025 is computer based, then this whole writing thing I'm talking about is going to be null and void. But if it's still going to be paper based, okay, then this is still valid. So take note of this format. We've not gotten any information from ICAN on the updates on going digital yet. So let's assume we're still going to write November 2025 exams in paper. Let's assume that. So that we are following this structure. So your appendices should start from page either 20, 21, 22, 23, depending on how much you write. You should know how much you write, how legible are your fonts, and how your painting, the way you write, your texts are. You should know how long. So within 20 to 25 pages is where you should start your appendix. So looking at requirement 1, we've been requested or instructed to review the analysis of key changes in revenue, cost, and overheads across the revenue streams for the 2 years 2017, 2018. So the first thing we do is we begin to review our financial statement analysis, just like we concluded in the chapter we just reviewed, chapter 2. So as you can see on my screen, we have a solution summary of Appendix 1 speaking to the revenue. So we have the revenue for 2017 in summary for all the streams. Then we have revenue for 2018. Then we have the cost of sales, which is the direct cost. Then we have the gross profit. Then we have selling and admin. We have operating profit. Then we have interest payable or finance cost, and we have the net profits before tax. So this is a summary financial or summary income statement. Then we use that to populate or calculate the change between 2017 and 2018. What was the difference between both years in terms of growth or reduction? So if you see the revenue figure, you can see they grew in 2018 by 16%. There's a change of 12 million naira. And in 2019, they also grew by 19% with a change of 17 million. So this change is part of the review we've been requested to speak to. So when you hear your review comparisons of analysis, key changes, just know you're supposed to do a year-to-year or year-on-year change analysis. And for Appendix 2, I'm still coming to Appendix 1. I'm going to show you a tutorial summary you have to go through that broke down these computations to decipherable chunks for you. And I've done that so that we don't waste much time on the call calculating the ratios one by one. So you can just go back and at your practice session, look at the tutorials and practice these computations very easily. So I've made it easy to follow through so that we can concentrate on the report, which is very, very important. Okay, so we have Appendix 2 speaking to the various revenue streams. So we have a revenue center for the company, for Detoy Farms, which is the fishery section is a revenue center. We have the poultry section, which is a revenue center. We have the cattle section, which is a revenue center. We have vegetable section, which is a revenue center. So we have how much each had made or contributed to the revenue stream or the revenue of the company in entirety. Then we have the ratios in Appendix 6 that was calculated apart from the change. So this change looks at the change between the 3 years and how they grew or how they dropped. But the ratios now in Appendix 3 was calculated. We spoke to gross profit ratio, operating profit margin, net profit margin, ROAS, ROE, working capital ratio, and return on asset. That was not explicitly asked. You were not asked to prepare ratios, but you see, when you hear the review should comprise of analysis of key changes in revenue cost, you should evaluate. So that review can mean many things. So you can look at the change, you can look at the revenue streams, and you can also look at some key ratios. Key ratios speaking to profitability, speaking to liquidity, there may be long-term solvency. But in this area, you have to review the analysis of revenue, cost, and overheads. So balance sheet items may not be necessary. Looking at maybe activity ratios or ratios that have to do with long-term solvency. So the review of just profitability ratios may work out. And that's why we prepared that here. Then Exhibit 4 speaks to Requirement 2. And Requirement 2 states that the assessment of the contract supply as contained in Exhibit 11. So we are to critically evaluate the proposed strategic business opportunity, the installation of meat processing plant by DFFP, as well as ethical considerations, broader economic or commercial issues and risks that may bedevil the project or the proposal, and our decision to accept or reject the project. So the computations in Appendix 4 spoke to what we need to write in Requirement 2. So we have our estimated revenue, and we have our total estimated revenue based on the probability provided to us. Then we do our NPV calculation based on the cost of capital provided, which is quite simple in my opinion. So now these are the tutorials, and this is where I want you to concentrate on, because as you are practicing, you need to look at the step-by-step way of how the figures were generated. Okay, so let me use this page as the appendix page so that I can show you through how these figures were generated. So you can follow through very seamlessly as you're practicing and looking at the figures. Now, you can see the revenue change speaks to the Naira change and the percentage change. So for Detoy farms, you will see that the revenue speaks to 77 million in 2017, and in 2018, 90 million or 90.5 million. And that's exactly what we did here. So the change is 2018 divided by 2018, I beg your pardon, subtracted from 2017, or 2017 subtracted from 2018, and you have the difference, which is what we did. And the change, which is this 12.9 divided by this previous year, 2017, will give us the percentage change. So new minus old divided by old, if you want to use that formula. So you are checking the change between the new year and the old year divided by the old year to have the percentage change. But to have the actual value, change in value, you need to compute 2018, the new minus the old, to have the value in Naira terms. So you do that for 2018, 2017, and you do that for 2019, 2018, and for all the variables. So I've computed it here. You have 2017 and 2018. You have 2018 and 2019, and the percentage change and the value change. We also did that for cost of sales for the 3 years. So you can see the percentage also. We also did for gross profit. You can see the tutorials. So everything has been done. So you just need to follow through the computation with your calculator to validate and understand the process. So you can see this interest payable. We have negative figures, and that culminated in the negative results and the percentage of the same. So we have 45.7 for interest payable and finance charges, and we have for 2018 and 2019 49, or let's say 43% approximately. We also have for the net profit before tax, we have 2017, 2018, and we have 2018, 2019 also. So all the computation of what is on this table is easily followed through based on these tutorials. So take your time to look at these figures and the computations so you don't get confused. I also provided a summary of the formula. I said the change in Naira is the current year minus the previous year, and the change in percentage is the change in the previous year times 100. Gross profit is definitely revenue minus cost of sales. Operating profit is gross profit minus selling and admin. Net profit definitely is operating profit minus finance charges. So you have it clearly provided at your fingertips. Take note of that. Okay, so for Appendix 2, you can see the computations for Appendix 2. Appendix 2 has the gross profit calculations, and these are the step-by-step approach. So I've given you the gross profit, or you know the gross profit formula, of course, is revenue minus cost of sales. Then you have for fishery. So for each revenue stream, you have to compute each of their gross profit. Of course, it's time consuming, but then you can see the results here. We have for fishery, revenue has been given to us in the exhibits. Is just to get the cost of sales and have our gross profit. Then we have the gross margin. We want to see each contribution or each performance of the revenue streams to the entire Detoy Farms revenue section. So you can see fishery 12.6% 2017, and the gross profit is the same 12.6, 12.6. So they plateaued for 3 years. So for poultry, 23, 23, 23 for 3 years. For cattle, 42, 42, 42 for 3 years. For veggies, 12, 12, 12 for 3 years. So this is the summary table. You could see how it was computed. So just follow through, and it's easily decipherable, very comprehensive, because the examiner just provided us with the results, and I provided us with the process. So the process of the computation, so that in case under exam conditions you come through such stuff, you'll be able to decipher it. Then for the ratios, you can see it's performed, and I called it Appendix 3. I provided the formula and the step-by-step computation for the 3 years for the ratios. So you have for gross profit margin, you have for operating profit margin, we also have for net profit margin, we also have for the return on capital employed. And I explained the capital employed calculation. So there are 3 variants of capital employed or return on capital employed. So the variant that was used here by the examiner was explained. Operating profit is the earnings before interest and tax. But you see capital employed is total capital invested in the business. So you could use total asset less current liabilities, which is majorly used. Some use total asset less total liabilities. And the third variant is not popularly used, but in case the operating profit would generally be derived from the company's profit before tax and interest, the capital employed is definitely mentioned above. So total asset minus current liability is definitely the denominator that is mostly used for capital employed, which is net assets. Net assets, yes. So we have for 2017, 24%, 29%, and 25%. So 2018 was a good year with good returns of over 29%. So I also provided notes and a brief explanation to the denominator. But don't get yourself confused. The calculations are not really, if you know the basic formulas, use the one that comes to mind. Your interpretation is very important. So I explained the simplicity or the simplification of the formulas and how they reflect on resources available, and also the distinction between the debt and equity mix of the formula. So this is just to give you an understanding as you read through on how that formula, because it's a significant formula used in interpreting profitability ratios. If you talk of profitability ratios, one ratio that must come to your mind is ROAS. It's a very important formula. So you need to understand it. A lot of candidates confused themselves because of the numerator. Some will say profit before interest and tax. Should we use profit before tax? Should we use profit after tax? So just read through this and you understand which is appropriate under any condition. So I concluded on that, and I also explained and calculated ROE, which is return on equity. I also did working capital ratio, which is our current ratio per se. I also did the last one, return on revenue to capital employed, which is like your asset turnover, just to give a feel to how it's calculated. So that's graphically what is here in the examiner's Pathfinder. All these details are not there, but that's just to guide you on the explanation and how to follow through on gray areas of calculations that were not provided. So you can see he didn't also provide exhibit for requirement 2, the computations. I'm sure he forgot in his Pathfinder to provide it. But then I was able to calculate the requirement 2 computation, speaking to revenue for the project proposed, and also the probability, and we're able to calculate the expected annual revenue, which is about 27.7 million. And we also had the step-by-step computation and also explanation of the expected revenue, the initial investment that was provided, plus the working capital, and also the cost of capital, the project, and the scrap value after 5 years. So you can see the step-by-step NPV calculation. So follow through it, use your calculator to get the discounting factor of 15% weighted cost of average, and the present value, which we arrived at 97.9 million. And removing or deducting the present value from the initial cost of capital or the initial outlay, we have a negative we have a negative NPV of 12 million naira. So we said this result means the project will reduce value by 12 million naira based on the assumption. So where you have a negative NPV, you know, of course, you reject or advise otherwise against the project. So we're saying the project may not be financially viable without any further adjustments on the cost or financial terms of the project. So that was not provided in the Pathfinder by the examiner, but that has to be calculated for you to be able to provide context and explanation for requirement 2. So follow through. There are very easy computations in my view and in my opinion, and it's easy to sail through in understanding how to navigate the explanations. All right, so any questions based on what I've said? So that will be the end of my tutorials that I provided context to the appendices, which I stratified into 4 of them. So I said Appendix 1 is the change, Appendix 2 is the revenue stream computation, then Appendix 3 is the ratios, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 7 of them. Then Appendix 4 is for requirement 2, which is the proposal, the business proposal. So just 4 appendix, and they are stratified correctly for you. Okay, so having done that, let's now go to the report proper. The report proper, which is where the marks are, very important. So the report proper. Now, if you look at the format I provided on the screen, you have 8 boxes. And those 8 boxes should guide how you write your report. You have 8 boxes. So those 8 boxes have to do with the way you structure a report. You mustn't copy what is in the boxes, but if you understand the content in terms of the headers and the subheaders, you'll be able to write on the report. So that PowerPoint slide I shared, you'll see that requirement 1 and 2 carry equal 32 marks each. And each box you are supposed to write on has 4 marks. Why 4 marks? On each box, you are supposed to provide 4 superior arguments or points. And those points indicate you have superior achievement. So if you list and explain 4 items under each box I'm going to explain, you have 4 marks. So the first box speaks to using data in the information provided in the exhibits. So when you use data that has been provided to you from the exhibits and you're able to integrate it and explain it, you'll be able to have 4 marks for the box on data and information. Then the second box is professional tools, and that's the analysis of ratio or any data you are able to analyze based on the professional tools you used in the appendices. So you'll be able to cross-reference them, whether they are ratios, whether they are NPV tools, strategic management tools, or performance management tools, whether they are analysis from models, PESTLE, SWOT, Porter 5, any of those models, any tool you use and explain them comes in the second box, which is professional tools. And you do that and provide 4 superior arguments to have 4 marks. Then your analytical skills speaks to the trend analysis, how you are able to explain the trajectory, how the company has performed over time. And if you're using the model, how you're able to explain the model and what the model is all about and how it's integrated into the case or the scenario provided to you. So that's the third box, your analytical skills. And you could call it trend analysis. You'll see how we named the header and the subheaders. And the fourth one is the identification of issues and options, which are the challenges and considerations, what to do and what to stay away from in the case. That's the fourth box. So you need to provide context and explanations in 4 points or sentences in that fourth box. Then the fifth one, which is very important, are ethical issues, speaking to your professional skepticism. So you need to state ethical issues about 4 of them, 4 points, explain them. And the last one, but not the least, is your evaluative skills and judgment, which I call risk assessment. You are evaluating what could go wrong. Risk is an event that could hamper the achievement of objectives of that company. So you could look at risk assessment from the positive and the negative aspect. So risk could be positive in the sense that you have opportunities you are pursuing and what could hamper them. And also risk could be negative in the sense that there are dangers. How do you stop those dangers? So in assessing a case, you need to evaluate the case and judge from a risk perspective. So those are the 6 boxes. And if you look at the 4 explanations and the 4 marks you earn, 6 times 4 is 24. Then very importantly, the next 2 boxes is your conclusion and your recommendation. If you don't conclude and recommend, then your 6 boxes, you've just wasted your time. So your conclusion is another box that must carry 4 superior arguments and explanations on what you found out in the previous 6 boxes. So pick important 4 items on the 6 boxes that you need to bring to the fore to the board and conclude on them. Then based on those conclusions, you recommend solutions based on what you've concluded, and the recommendations should be 4. So you see you have 8 boxes, and 8 times 4 is 32. And you have 32 marks for requirement 1, 32 marks for requirement 2, and you have 64 marks. So that's the concept and the general structure of your report. So as you can see on the screen now, based on this explanation I've made, requirement 1, in providing requirement 1's header, you can see that I summarized the header and I stated a review of key changes in revenue, cost, overheads across the company's revenue streams, and evaluation of the impact of these changes on the company's operating profit, and comments on the reasons for bank overdraft at the end of each year despite the huge profit made by the company each year. So you can see this can even be summarized lesser than this if you don't want too much words. Just summarize requirement 1. Never, ever, ever write financial statement analysis as your header. Don't ever do that. Never do that on the case study exams. If you write financial statement analysis as a header, then you are going to be marked down. Or you say requirement 1 as a header. What is requirement 1? That is no header. So state the header explicitly, unequivocally, in summary form. I mark some marks and you see somebody write, I will mark you down. So please state the header as the examiner gave you in summary. You may not be able to copy it verbatim, but state it in summary form that will understand this is requirement 1, not financial statement analysis. And then you underline it or you put a capital letter. Financial statement, I don't know what that means. The examiner does not know what that means. Or you say requirement 1. We don't know what that means. Write it in words. So please take note of these nitty-gritties and pitfalls as we continue. So in using data and information, I call that header general overview. What are we overviewing? We are looking at the performance and what it is from the data provided to us on Detoy farms. So you can see from the general information, I stratified to pick 1 mark each. A for that box, B for that same box, C for that same box, D for that same box. You can see 4 different explanations and conversation. And that gives you 4 marks for this box. So you see this header and each explanation. If you don't want to use A, you can use maybe Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3. But whatever way, make the examiner identify that you are giving superior achievement. So if you give 4 points on this box, general overview, like I stated, and is speaking to data and information, of course. 1, 2, 3, 4, which is in form of ABCD. You have 4 marks for this box. And what are we explaining? We are saying that Detoy farms showed revenue growth. So they did 77 million, and this is just directly from even the pre-scene. You can get this data from the pre-scene. You don't need any computation to explain this. You said it's driven by poultry and fishery. Despite increase in cost, the business improved in gross profit and return, blah, 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 blah. So every explanation we got here is from the exhibits directly, speaking to the data information, and you have 1 mark for this. Then for B, We spoke to profitability ratios, which we have calculated. But there are other information you could also use. It's not streamlined to this alone. So for general information, you can pick from your appendices, your calculation. You can pick from the general financial statement or financial information provided to you to write. You're just transcribing what is in the figures into your explanation to pick your marks. So take note of this. So the B part, we spoke about the profitability ratios and generally how the company has done from profit after tax. We spoke about the return. So generally, we just mixed up information. And any information you pick from your appendix, please quote the appendix. Cross-referencing, that's what it means. So we are saying see Appendix 3 based on what we've just said as evidence of the work done. So please read through the lines. The next one we spoke about is the performance of Detoy farms, looking at their trend and the percentages year in, year out, 2017, 2018, 2019. And we concluded by saying the company's diversification results strategy is yielding results with the food. So you don't need this conclusion. It's just we are stating that as part of our argument. You have a conclusion section, but I just stated this as part of the discussion. You don't need to write this elaborate. I just give you a guide so that as you are reading through, you have a lot of options and a plethora of ideas on how to write. Writing is a challenging case study. So I make these boxes quite rich so that as you read, it will resonate with you and you'll be able to write, even though you will not write as much volume as this, but write in a way you earn the marks seamlessly. And the fourth point for our superior achievement, I spoke about the overhead at the overdraft at the end of the year. And we're saying that these combined resources and everything that strained the cash flow of the business has led to the company relying on bank overdrafts to meet a short-term obligation. So these generally are from the financial statements and the information provided for you to explain the general overview, which is the use of data and information. And you pick 4 marks. So that's data and information header. Then the next header is analytical skills. Sorry, professional tools, the use of professional tools. I beg your pardon. Analytical skills is the third box. So the use of professional tools, we're looking at business performance. You can state it as business performance. You can say company performance. Any header that resonates with you, make sure you state it, put the header there. The examiner understands. So, and by no means should you quote what the examiner has used as headers and subheaders. Don't say data and information. Don't say professional tools. If you do that, you will be marked down. So you need to use your own words. Your own is you are just following his format. Use your own words, use your own headers, whatever resonates with you as you read, as you practice, use it. And you are not restricted to use my own. If you want to use my own, fine. But this is how I understand the headers and subheaders and how I use it. And several students that have come through my tutorship have used this and they've passed the case study paper. Very key. So the business performance looks at the ratios, and we're looking at the professional tools you use. So we're looking at the ratios that you have computed very explicitly. So you can see the gross margin ratios or gross profit margin ratios. We spoke to the years and we explained what happened in our best understanding as chartered accountants. We said the consistency in conclusion of the gross margin suggests operational efficiency and sound management of production costs across board. We now say see exhibit appendix 3. So seeing appendix is very important in this box because you are trying to cross-reference what you calculated. You are not just bringing these numbers from the blues. You have a base for them. So please quote the appendix, see appendix. It's very important you do that. Cross-reference your appendix for this second box. Then the B also, we now start talking about each segment. You can see the fisheries segment. We said it remains stable over the years. The A part spoke about the general group, but the B part is now coming into sections. This is the fisheries segment. And we said the fisheries segment may have limited pricing flexibility or faces higher production costs relative to sales, and it requires strategic improvement to enhance profitability. So we picked a point from the fisheries segment. We also picked another point from the poultry segment, and we spoke to the poultry segment to pick a point. And the fourth part, we spoke to the cattle segment of the revenue and what they've done for 3 years and how they've performed. And we also spoke to a conclusion on the stability and what it. So there are several areas. You can see the E segment, we spoke to the gross margin of veggies segment. The F, we spoke to the operating profit. So there are several areas to talk about, but please, you don't have time. You don't need to go this detailed. I gave you all this for you to be able to read and have a plethora of options to be able to write. Once you've given 4 header or 4 points or 4 explanations, you stop at D. Please go to the next. You don't have time. Don't waste time because you're not going to be giving more than 4 marks for each header. So why write more than 4? I gave you more than enough explanations because I want you to read and have plethora of ideas to write. So very important. Don't write more than 4, please. You don't have time. Remember, you still have requirement 2 to work on. We are still on requirement 1. Okay. Please, can somebody confirm you are hearing? Because everybody seems to be quiet and I seem to be talking to myself for over an hour now. Oh, okay. Fantastic. Oh, that's good. I'm glad I'm not talking to myself alone. Okay. So we are done with professional tools. Let's go and explain using our analytical skills. And the third header is business trend analysis. You could call it trend analysis. You could call it anything that comes to your mind as a header, but let it resonate with your analysis you are performing. So we're saying that Detoy Farms has consistently performed upward for 3 years. So you see what they did 2017 and we're stating it. And we said the steady increase reflects positive growth in the farm's core business segments. And we mentioned them. So we are saying that this area of the business is doing well. So we stated that in the first point. Then in the area of gross margin, we're looking at the stability for 3 years. We said there's slight fluctuation, but it plateaued. 22, 22, 22, it just plateaued. And we said the uniformity in the gross profit demonstrates operational efficiency across the business segment. So feel free to express yourself with any point looking at the trend under this box. And for the C aspect, we said the trend in gross margin, speaking to the revenue stream, had varying levels of profitability. So we said cattle, poultry. We are now coming into specifics. And you can see we also quoted the appendix. So we said overall, the highest or the consistent high margins in poultry and cattle indicated their importance as primary profit drivers. So you see, we are specific here saying while fishery and veggies contributed to revenue, but with narrow profit margins, we are saying that these 2 cost or these 2 profit centers, poultry and cattle, did better. Looking at the trend. So we also look at working capital and how it has working capital has worked for the 3 years. And we quoted the appendix. So read through and you have a lot of things to talk about. And also the dependence on the bank borrowings that the requirement said we should address. So we said for the 3 years, the company had no non-current liabilities. But in 2018, it had an overdraft of 3.6, which increased to 6M. And by the end of 2019, they had 7 million naira loan. Alongside a reduction in bank overdraft of 1.9, we are saying that Detoy Farms gradually increases its reliance from short-term to long-term financing to meet its working capital needs, especially as trade payables decreased and retained earnings increased over the years. So you see, we are commenting on what he said we should do in requirement 1. But don't go more than 4, please. In speaking to your trend analysis, don't do more than 4, but I gave you about 6, 7. I spoke about also deploying block of profit policy and all that. So whatever it is you are writing on, any points that come to your mind, make sure you don't go more than 4. There is a lot to write about, of course, but key points, significant points that would influence decision making for the board or the client you are writing to. All right, so the next box is issues and options. What are the issues in the case? What are the considerations? So the challenges can be from the financial statements or the financial statement components or the financial statement computations you've done. So we said Detoy Farms has steady growth rate increasing from this to this. And we said the growth both has opportunities and challenges. We now said the rise in revenue could be attributed to successful expansion of the product offerings, improving sales strategies, and potential new opportunities. We now said the shop of a contract supply has challenges that lies in ensuring the revenue growth. So this is a challenge. And we are saying that the increase in revenue must be carefully balanced with the need to control working capital. So there is a need, and we're talking about the farms must consider how to align operational efficiency with the revenue expansion to avoid financial strain while capitalizing on growth opportunities. So you can see the shop is financed from the revenue of the primary products from Detoy farms. So whatever the shop is going to do, the primary products must perform well. And that's what we are saying here. Yeah, I saw Sherifat flashed her hand. Please go ahead. Feel free to interject.
Yes, well done, sir. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yes, sir. My question is that when you were trying to explain how the 8 points will go, you said data and information will be the first, then professional tools, analytical skills, then allocation of issues and options. But after when you were now presenting it now, after explaining that data and information, you said the next is identification of issues and options. Is it are those financial ratios that you explained above the professional analytical skills that you said earlier? Because I thought after discussing the data and information, the next is the professional tools, analytical skills, or we can arrange it anyhow.
Thank you very much for that question. Okay, so arranging it anyhow based on your own order may not be advisable, in the sense that the examiner has a format. So I would like you to follow that format to get it graphically. So the first one is data and information, and they are sequential. Data and information is general information provided from the either financial statements or the non-financial data provided. So that should come first. Don't make it third or fourth, or so you may make reading and examining you or marking you challenging. So follow that order, I suggest. So the first one is data and information, which I've spoken to. I said I just changed the header so that I don't copy what the examiner did. So my own header for data and information is general overview. You can say business overview. You can say analysis of information provided, anything. But just make sure it resonates with data and information. Then number two, I said business performance. Business performance speaks to analytical skills. And that has to do with your professional tools. And you see the business performance, we integrated the gross profit ratio, gross margin ratios, and we looked at the segments each. So anywhere of the ratios you've calculated, you could speak to them and explain them under this box, which is business performance. Then the next order I said was analytical skills, which is the header that has to do with business trend analysis. This is what I called it. You can call it any name, but speak to the trend. Look at the trajectory, what they've done over the years, and speak to each component that comes to your mind, but no more than 4. And the fourth one I'm talking about now, as you interjected, is challenges and consideration, which is the fourth header. And that has to do with issues and options. But I won't call it issues and options because I don't want to copy what is in the Pathfinder or the examiner's format directly. And I call that challenges and considerations. What are the ups and the downs? What are the negatives and the positives that you want to speak to from the case? And I said part of it is the revenue and the financing of the contract shop is the first one. Then the second one, I said the cost of sales has remained constant. Has remained relatively constant with the cost of sales. The Detoy Farm's cost of sales ratio has remained relatively constant. And we said against revenue increases over the same period. So this steady ratio indicates that while revenue is growing, the company has managed to control the increase in production cost. So this is a consideration, which is number 2. So in answering your questions, SH, you need to follow the sequence, and that can only be achieved by practice. As you're practicing several questions, just follow the sequence. Don't mix the headers together. So let the examiner read from this one to this one to this one to this one, and let that flow. let that flow go on. I hope I was able to address your question.
Yes, thank you very much, sir.
All right, you're welcome. Okay, so I was speaking to challenges and consideration. I know it's already 10, but just let me land, at least let me conclude requirement 1. Then maybe in the next class we'll continue requirement 2, if you don't mind. So let me just land, have a safe landing, and don't hang in the air, so that when next we come, we know we are starting from somewhere. So the second challenge or consideration is speaking to the balance, which will require continuous monitoring of the cost drivers, as we said, particularly raw materials, labor, to ensure profitability is not eroded. And it's a consideration. Then the third one is gross profit has remained relatively constant and it plateaued, like we said, and we said that it's essential for the company to continue monitoring its cost structure to avoid margin erosion in the face of potential price fluctuations or rising input cost. So we've spoken to gross profit margin, cost of sales, and how it's a challenge on the company's performance. We also said the interest expense is also increasing. We said despite the growing expenses, we said the interest expense highlights the need for the company to carefully manage its debt. So this is a challenge that needs to be addressed. We spoke to Detoy Farm's cattle revenue streams, which is a significant contributor, and this is a consideration. And those contributors should be optimized to expand the business. So the cattle business is a key revenue driver. That's what we are saying, and it's a consideration. So I gave you 5 challenges and considerations you could discuss. So read through them. It will enhance your writing flow. The more you read good thoughts, good write-ups, it will help you be able to write. One of the ways to impress the examiner is to express yourself on pen and paper very seamlessly. That will make you get your marks very easily. So read through not just 1, 2, 3 reports, read several, so that in writing and practicing, you'll be able to come up with good thoughts penned down. Then the 5th box, we said, is ethical issues. We said the management accounts of Detoy Farms for 3 years have not been audited, which is an ethical issue. And it raises ethical concern because financial statements that have not been audited may have material misstatements, and the board may not have trust on the financial statement. So that's an ethical issue you need to point out, which is number 1. Then number 2, it may not be an ethical issue, it may be a critical issue. And that's why I said ethical issues plus critical analysis. The continuous reliance on bank borrowings is a significant threat to operations. So the dependency on external financing limits the company's ability to redistribute or reinvest profit, flow it back to the business. So that's a critical analysis. It may not be an ethical issue directly. So anything critical that could cause or be bedeviling to the company, bring it under ethical issues if you don't have significant ethical issues to talk about. Then the third one, we said that Detoy Farm should consider expanding its production of cattle and poultry products, because it should leverage this strength and could enhance margins and drive sustainability. So it's a critical issue that needs to be enhanced. That's what we are saying. Then the 4th one is the growth in receivables. You can see that it's been growing steadily, and it may impact cash flow and their working capital efficiency. So you have 4. Please read to the other ones. If you don't have ethical issues to state, or you could point out, look for critical issues that could affect the company and state them under this header. So you give 4 and you're done. Then I gave you about 8. So please read through most of them, and some even have figures, and they are critical issues that could also fit into ethical issues. Okay, so the last one is your evaluative skills and judgment, number 6. And I call that risk assessment, or you could say evaluation of findings. And it still permeates around the issues on the case, financial and non-financial. So we said the revenue has been growing consistently, but there's a positive indicator of market demand and expansion. And we said this growth presents potential risks, such as the need for increased expansion. So you see, we are bringing risk into it, tighter working capital management, and the potential or possibility of overtrading if not carefully controlled. So you see, we are bringing the element of risk to make sure we are actually mitigate every issues, and we are futuristic in our approach. We are trying to be proactive. That's what we are saying. So your evaluative skills is what is tested here, and just speak to any component or any area that you think needs careful assessment. Then the cost of sales, we said, has remained stable, approximately 77 to 78% for the 3 years. But we said the consistency is a positive risk indicator, suggesting that it has maintained effective control over direct costs despite the revenue growth. So, however, this could also indicate limited scope of improving cost efficiency and representing a missed opportunity risk for enhancing margins. So your evaluation is very important here. We also spoke to gross margin. We also spoke to selling and distribution. We also spoke to rows from a risk perspective. So once you give 4, share some 4 thoughts on what generally has happened in your findings. You pick your 4 marks. Now, the conclusion, which is very important. You are concluding from everything you've spoken to in the last 6 main headers and explanation. So we are concluding on bank borrowing. We said Detoy Farms should carefully monitor its bank borrowings. It's increasing. 2, revenue growth. Detoy Farms has been growing steadily. We concluded. 3, gross margin stability. Gross margin is stable. 4, declining rows, and which is a significant ratio. It's declining based on our computation. 5, high cost of sales. Though we said the cost of sales remain high, consuming about 77% of revenue annually, but there's still room for profit expansion, and we need to. So we are concluding on 5 of these items. Then what is our recommendation based on this conclusion? We said the first recommendation is to reduce bank borrowing. We are addressing the first conclusion, which I said is the statement of the problem. How do you address bank borrowing? We said Detroit funds should aim to reduce this at least 40%. We are specific. Within 12 months, we are timely based on the SMART acronym we use. And we now give specifically how to do it through better working capital management, reinvestment of profit in order to improve. So you've not just recommended from the blues, you've told them how, through working capital management and reinvestment of profit. So your recommendation should not just be reduce bank borrowing. That's all. That's not a recommendation. You have to explain how they should do it and how to achieve it. And B, continued playback of profit policy. And we stated how with timelines. We said in the next 3 years. So read through cost control measures. We said how, when, and what to do. We also said expand high margin revenue streams. We also stated in 18 months. You can see the recommendations are specific. And once you give 4 from your conclusions, you are done with requirement 1. So I've taken 8 minutes of your time and I've safely landed. So next week, on Friday, our next class is on Friday, we'll be looking at requirement 2 and we'll continue from there. So I have 2 minutes more. I just took 10 minutes of our time. So in the next 2 minutes, please, if you have any thoughts, questions, contributions, please ask so that we can close and go and rest. Any questions? So I believe we've had an eye-opening section. Some of us that have not really been doing well with the case study have seen where our pitfalls are now.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please, Tunde, go ahead. I can hear you.
Well done.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate your explanation. It's just as if the sun is coming tomorrow. I'm good to go. This is my first lecture with you on case study.
Wow.
I didn't know. I just went to go. We don't know right from left. So that is the major thing. The way you tackle all these things, you have already simplified everything. I didn't know that it's like this. So I don't know. How do we come about all these things? In the before now, I used to write issue and option, all these topic, all these 8 skill bosses, I will project it to write under. I wonder why I scored 17, sometimes 25. That is the second time. So this time around, I'm going to give you 80. Thank you for the
Thank you
lecture.
very much. Thank you so much for that feedback. I
Nice one,
appreciate
nice
this.
one. I align with that too.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. In fact, I'm going to share the solution after the class. So please, you guys should go through it and practice. You know, I had this similar testimony of a guy that 4 diets, he's been writing it 4 diets, and that has kept him from qualification. So somebody sent his contact to me and we met. He was even insisting he should pay and all that. I said, no, let's go through it. And by God's grace, he followed this format and all that. And he scored 57 in the last diet. I was so happy for him. After 4 tries, this was the 5th one. So I'm happy for this feedback. And I know that if you continue like this, you're practicing, you're going through this format, you are also integrating resources. I mean, case study, I used to say it's the simplest too. If as dull as I am, I used to say I'm very dull. If as dull as I am, I can score 78 at first attempt. Anybody can pass case study. I'm serious. So, like Zig Ziglar said, he said, any dummy can succeed if he knows what it takes.
You are not done, bro. Okay. Humility. See that we are looking at, we are reading your list. You are too much. You God will continue to endow you with more wisdom. You are just too much. God has endowed you. And you're a blessing to us. God will continue.
Amen. Thank you for the prayers and the kind words. I appreciate that. So please, let's go and rest. If we don't have any other feedback or question, and thank you for the feedback. I will continue requirement 2, and that should be the last class so that we can continue our lecture. So after every 2 topics, we take a past question. 2 topics, we take a past question so that we don't just do lectures and you just forget the theory. And when we come to question and answer, you now be like, which challenge is this? So I think this approach is better. After every 2 chapters, we have 11 chapters.